All right, so today we're diving into something that I think everyone listening can relate to. It's that voice we all have in our heads.
Oh, you mean the one that never shuts up?
Exactly. Like ever. Like when you're trying to remember someone's name and it's like, is it John? No, maybe Jim.
Or when you're driving and it's arguing with itself about which route is faster.
Oh, yeah. Or the best, when you're trying to sleep and suddenly decides to replay every awkward moment from like the past 10 years.
That sounds familiar. It's like having a roommate who's also a stand-up comedian, but their material is all your anxieties.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're going to explore this inner voice, this internal monologue.
Yeah.
Why it's there, what it's doing, and maybe how to not always listen to it.
And most importantly, we're going to look at what it means for you. Because understanding this voice is a huge step toward understanding who you really are.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like, have you ever tried to actually silence that voice?
Oh, many times. It's not easy.
It's almost like the voice itself gets defensive. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it doesn't want to be ignored.
It's as if it's trying to convince you that it is you.
Right. But here's the thing. You are not the voice. You are the one hearing it.
That's a key distinction.
Yeah, like, think of it this way. Imagine there's a flower pot in front of you.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Would you say the flower pot is you?
No, definitely not.
Okay, now what if there's a photo next to it? Or a book? Are any of those you?
Nope. I'm observing them, but I'm not them.
Exactly. And it's the same with your thoughts. They're just things appearing in your awareness.
You're the observer, the witness to the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves.
Yeah, and whether that voice is telling you you're amazing or that you're a total mess, neither of those thoughts is more you than the other.
They're just thoughts passing through your consciousness like clouds.
Okay, so let's get practical. We've established you are not your thoughts. But most of us, let's be honest, kind of live like we are. We believe that voice.
Right. We get caught up in the stories it's telling us.
Yeah, so think about it. What if that voice, instead of being inside your head, was like a person, like a real person who followed you around all day and just said out loud everything your inner voice was saying?
Well, I think I'd find them pretty exhausting.
Right. Like imagine that person constantly criticizing you, second-guessing your every move, or like jumping from one opinion to the next without even taking a breath. Would you want to hang out with that person?
Not if I could help it.
Exactly. But that's kind of how we treat our own inner voice. We give it so much power.
We believe it's every word, even when it's being totally unreasonable.
Yeah, I mean, think about how often that voice has been wrong. You know, it's told you couldn't do something, and then you totally did it.
Or it's convinced you that something terrible was going to happen, and then it didn't.
Right. So if this was a friend giving you advice, you'd probably be like, okay, thanks, but I'm not sure I trust you on this one.
Maybe we should start questioning our inner voice in the same way.
Exactly. So if we're not our thoughts, then who are we?
That's the big question, isn't it?
I mean, we often define ourselves by labels, right? Like our name, our job.
Our relationships, our roles in society.
Yeah. But those are all external things. They can change.
You're not the same person you were 10 years ago, are you?
Definitely not.
Your body has changed. Your experiences have changed. Your beliefs have probably changed.
Right. Like you mentioned playing Dorothy in the 5th grade. I bet that was a whole different you.
Totally different. But even with all those changes, there's still a sense of me that's been there through it all.
Okay, so what is that constant me? What is it that's been there throughout all of our changes?
That's where we get to the idea of consciousness. Pure awareness.
Okay, so what's that? Like awareness of my surroundings?
That's part of it, but it's even more fundamental than that. Think of it this way. Imagine you're looking at a busy street.
Okay, lots going on.
Now, how long would it take for your inner voice to describe everything you're seeing? Every person, every car, every building?
Oh, that would take forever.
Right. But in reality, you're already aware of the whole scene instantly. You don't have to think about it.
So it's just like instantly understanding what I'm looking at.
Exactly. That's consciousness in action. It's just pure awareness without the need for any mental commentary.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. But it's still kind of abstract.
Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine you're in a room with some friends, and there's a piano. Now imagine that piano disappears.
Gone.
Would that change who you are?
I don't think so. I'd just be confused about where the piano went.
Right. Now imagine your friends disappear.
Okay. Creepy, but I'm still here.
Now imagine your awareness itself disappears. What's left?
Whoa. That's a
That's tough to even imagine.
Exactly. Because the very act of imagining requires awareness. You can't think or experience anything without it.
So if I'm not my thoughts, and I'm not the things I see around me, then I must be that awareness.
We're getting it. That awareness, that consciousness is the foundation of who you are. It's the silent observer behind all your thoughts, feelings, and experiences.
So we're like this sort of awareness, just experiencing life.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You are the awareness that experiences, not the experiences themselves.
Okay, so that's our mind. But what about our feelings? All that emotional stuff that seems to drive so much of what we do.
Well, that brings us to the heart. And not just the physical heart, but the heart as an energetic center.
Oh, like a chakra.
Exactly. Think about it. When you feel a surge of love or inspiration or even like a burst of confidence, you can feel it in your chest, right?
Like a physical sensation.
That's your heart chakra, and it's a powerful source of energy. It influences how we interact with the world, how open or closed we are to experiences.
So our heart is like the seat of our emotions.
You could say that. But here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes we experience things that create disturbances in that heart energy, like unresolved emotional experiences, traumas, even just everyday stresses.
Okay, so it's like our heart is holding on to these experiences.
Exactly. And those unresolved experiences can create what are called samskaras.
Samskaras. What are those?
Think of them as like energetic knots, disturbed energy patterns that get stored in our heart chakra. And they can stay there for years, influencing our reactions and behaviors in ways we might not even be aware of.
Oh, wow. So like they're kind of like emotional baggage.
That's a good way to think about it. And these samskaras can be triggered by seemingly random things. Like you mentioned earlier how a certain car might trigger a negative reaction even years after the original event.
Yeah, the light blue Mustang.
Exactly. It's because that visual cue is activating a samskara, an old pattern of emotional energy that's still stored in your system.
That's kind of scary. Like we're being controlled by these invisible forces.
Well, not controlled exactly, but they definitely influence us. It's like having a subconscious script that's playing in the background, shaping our responses to the world.
So what can we do about these samskaras? Can we like get rid of them?
That's the goal, ultimately. But it's not always easy. Our natural tendency when we feel any kind of disturbance, whether it's physical or emotional, is to protect ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that protection often comes in the form of closing down. We close our hearts, we shut down emotionally, we build walls around ourselves.
So it's like we're trying to avoid feeling those uncomfortable feelings.
Exactly. And it's a natural response, but it can become a problem if we're constantly closing down. It prevents us from fully experiencing life, from connecting with others, from really being open to love and joy.
And it's interesting how we, as a society, have kind of normalized this closing down.
Oh yeah, we've become so sensitive to discomfort, so afraid of feeling anything negative.
We're always trying to avoid anything that might trigger us.
And we end up wasting so much energy on self-protection. But here's the thing. There's this unlimited source of energy within each of us.
Oh, like the energy from our heart chakra.
Exactly. But when we close down, when we constrict ourselves, we block that flow. It's like dimming the lights on our own inner potential.
Okay, so how do we stop closing down? Like, how do we deal with those emotional thorns?
It takes practice. We need to become more aware of our patterns, our defenses, our triggers.
And what do we do when we notice them?
We have a choice. We can keep trying to avoid anything that might activate those painful feelings.
Like tiptoeing around our inner thorns.
Exactly. Or we can start to work on actually removing those thorns.
And how do we do that?
It starts with shifting our perspective. Instead of seeing our psychological symptoms like fear, anxiety, or jealousy as things to be feared and suppressed.
Like we need to fix them.
Right. We can start to see them as signals, as messages from our psyche.
Like our mind is trying to tell us something.
Exactly. And just like physical pain tells us there's something wrong in our body, these emotional symptoms are often pointing to areas where we need to heal, to grow, to evolve.
So instead of trying to get rid of those feelings, we should listen to them.
Exactly. And that means observing them, allowing them to be there without judgment or resistance.
Like just letting them be.
Yes. And in those moments, when you're feeling overwhelmed by a difficult emotion, ask yourself, who is it that's aware of this feeling?
So like shift my focus from the feeling itself to the one who's feeling it.
Exactly. Because you are not your emotions, just like you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that is experiencing them. And that shift in perspective, even if it's just for a moment, can create a huge sense of freedom.
Wow, that's powerful. So we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions then.
Mm-hmm.
What are we? Like, what's the big picture here?
Think of it this way. Imagine you're living in a house.
Okay.
But this isn't a regular house. It's a house built entirely of your thoughts and emotions.
So, like, the walls are made of my fears, my anxieties, my hopes and dreams.
Exactly. And you've spent so much time inside this house, you've become convinced that it's the whole world.
But it's not.
No. It's just a tiny, limited perspective on a much vaster reality.
And those walls, they're blocking out the light?
Exactly. They're blocking you from experiencing the fullness of who you are, from connecting with something much greater than yourself.
So how do we get out of this house?
It's not about destroying the house. It's about expanding your awareness beyond its walls. It's about recognizing that the house is just a construct, a mental creation.
And there's a whole world outside.
A whole universe. And that's where the ancient wisdom of the middle way comes in.
The middle way.
Yeah.
Is that like finding balance?
Exactly. It's the recognition that clinging to extremes, whether in our thoughts, emotions, or actions, ultimately creates suffering.
So it's like finding that sweet spot between the two.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You need food to survive, but both overeating and starving yourself are harmful.
Or like sleeping. Too much sleep, and you're groggy, but not enough, and you're exhausted.
Exactly. The middle way is about finding that balanced, harmonious path.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about finding that equilibrium.
Exactly. And it's not static, it's a constant process of adjusting, adapting, refining. It's like sailing a boat.
Oh, like adjusting the sails to the wind.
Exactly. You need both the wind and the sails to move forward, but you also need to constantly adjust to the changing conditions. If you cling too rigidly to one extreme, you'll capsize.
So it's about being flexible, adaptable, and trusting that we can navigate the journey.
Exactly. And when we start to live from that place of balance, of harmony, we open ourselves up to a whole new level of experience.
Like we're connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
You could say that. There's a sense of moving towards the divine, towards a source of love and wisdom that's always present, always available.
And that's what brings true happiness.
Happiness, peace, fulfillment, all those qualities that we're all ultimately seeking.
Wow. So much to think about.
And the beautiful thing is, it's all within your reach. It all starts with that choice. To be open, to be curious, to be willing to look beyond the limitations of your own mind.
To step outside that house of thoughts and emotions and see what else is out there.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, to discover that true happiness isn't something you have to search for. It's already here within you, waiting to be revealed.
That's an inspiring thought to end on. So to everyone listening, what if the key to happiness is simply choosing to be happy, to let go of resistance, to embrace the present moment, and to trust in the unfolding of life? That's something worth exploring.